At first, people didn't want to believe it. When clips and screenshots began circulating again showing Claressa Shields shifting her tone, her stance, and her story for what felt like the third time, fans hesitated before reacting. There was a pause. A collective moment of silence online where supporters tried to make sense of what they were seeing. Because this wasn't just another viral misunderstanding. This wasn't one comment taken out of context. This was a clear change in energy, again, and this time the internet wasn't in the mood to explain it away. Claressa Shields had once been the internet's underdog hero. Loud, confident, unfiltered, and unapologetically emotional, she built a fan base that admired her honesty as much as her talent. People felt like they knew her, like she said what others were too afraid to say. When drama first started surrounding her personal life, especially anything connected to Remy Ma and Papoose, many fans rushed to defend her without hesitation. They believed her emotions were real. They believed her reactions were justified. And most importantly, they believed her story because she told it with conviction. That belief is what made this moment hurt differently. The first time Claressa's narrative shifted, people noticed, but they were gentle about it. They told themselves that emotions change, that healing isn't linear, that someone can feel one way today and differently tomorrow. They excused contradictions as growth. They defended her in comment sections, arguing with strangers, insisting that context mattered. And Claressa seemed to lean into that support, reinforcing the idea that she was just processing things in real time under intense public pressure. But then it happened again. This time, fans began noticing patterns. Statements that didn't align with past interviews, posts that contradicted earlier posts, a tone that shifted from confident certainty to defensive explanation, and slowly, quietly, the support began to fracture. Not loudly at first, just small cracks, a few comments asking questions instead of offering praise, a few fans saying, "Wait, didn't she say the opposite before?" The mood was changing, even if people weren't ready to admit it yet. What pushed everything over the edge was how sudden the most recent switch felt. One moment, Claressa appeared firm, resolved, and emotionally settled. The next, she was backtracking, reframing, and repositioning herself as misunderstood. Fans didn't just feel confused, they felt played. Because it wasn't only the story that changed. It was the attitude, the certainty with which she now dismissed what she had once emphasized. And the internet does not forget receipts. Clips started circulating side by side. Old interviews paired with new ones. Screenshots of captions placed next to fresh statements that directly contradicted them. Suddenly, it wasn't speculation anymore, it was comparison. And once comparison enters the chat, emotion gets replaced by analysis. Support turns into scrutiny. And that's a dangerous transition for any public figure. The backlash didn't come as screaming hate. That's what made it worse. It came as disappointment. Fans saying they felt tired. Fans admitting they didn't know what to believe anymore. Fans who once rode hard for Claressa now saying, "I can't keep defending this." Emotional fatigue is far more damaging than outrage because it signals detachment. And detachment is where influence goes to die. As this shift was unfolding in real time, Remy Ma and Papoose chose to remain largely silent. And that silence carried weight. In a digital culture where statements are expected instantly and emotions are often performed publicly, their restraint stood out. Every calm appearance, every unbothered photo, every moment where they refused to respond added to the narrative without them saying a single word. Silence in this case wasn't emptiness. It became a strategy, intentional or not, that shaped how the situation was interpreted. By contrast, Claressa's emotional shifts became far more visible. Her reactions, her timing, her moments of vulnerability all felt amplified when placed next to Remy and Papoose's composed presence. Whether that contrast was fair didn't matter much in the court of public opinion. Perception took control. The internet began drawing its own conclusions, slowly painting a picture where Remy appeared grounded and dignified, Papoose appeared measured and in control, and Claressa was labeled as reacted. And once that framing begins to circulate, it takes on a life of its own. Social media thrives on simple storylines. It doesn't reward nuance or emotional complexity. It chooses sides quickly and then defends those choices aggressively. Claressa's humanity, her confusion, her hurt, her attempts to process things in real time was flattened into a single word: emotional. Meanwhile, Remy's silence was interpreted as strength, and Papoose's distance was seen as discipline. None of these labels captured the full reality, but they were repeated often enough to feel true. What gets lost in moments like this is the imbalance of expectation. Claressa was expected to carry her emotions quietly, privately, and gracefully, even as the situation unfolded publicly. When she failed to meet that impossible standard, criticism followed immediately. Remy, on the other hand, benefited from a long-established public image built on resilience and composure. Papoose benefited from being associated with loyalty and patience. These reputations didn't appear overnight, and they shaped how every action or inaction was interpreted. Once a narrative hardens online, reversing it becomes nearly impossible. Every new moment is filtered through the existing lens. Claressa's words were examined for weakness. Her pauses were read as instability. Her honesty was reframed as impulsiveness. And the louder the commentary grew, the harder it became for her to reclaim control of how she was seen. Supporters tried to argue that Claressa was simply responding to new information, new emotions, new realizations. But critics pushed back harder this time. They accused her of rewriting history, of switching sides depending on public reaction, of trying to regain control of a narrative that was slipping through her fingers. And unlike before, those accusations didn't get drowned out, they gained traction. What made the situation even more uncomfortable was how personal it all felt. This wasn't celebrity gossip detached from reality. These were real emotions playing out publicly. People weren't just judging Claressa's words, they were reacting to her pain, her confusion, and her attempts to protect herself emotionally. But sympathy has limits, especially when consistency disappears. Some fans began questioning whether Claressa ever truly knew what she wanted, or if she was reacting moment by moment to public feedback. Others suggested that pride was now driving the narrative, that admitting she was wrong would feel worse than switching up again. And then there were those who believed she was simply overwhelmed, trapped between private feelings and public expectation, losing control of the story she once dominated. As criticism grew, Claressa's responses seemed to add fuel instead of clarity. Instead of grounding the situation, her tone felt sharper, more defensive. And defensiveness, especially when paired with inconsistency, often reads as guilt, even when it isn't. Fans began interpreting every word, every emoji, every pause as intentional messaging. The pressure was escalating fast. This is where things took a psychological turn. Because public switch-ups don't usually come from nowhere. They come from fear. Fear of being embarrassed. Fear of being seen as wrong. Fear of losing control over how you're perceived. When someone feels that fear publicly, their instinct is often to grab the narrative tighter, even if that means changing it repeatedly. But the tighter you grip, the more obvious the struggle becomes. By now, the conversation wasn't just about what Claressa said. It was about trust. And once trust cracks, even truth sounds questionable. Fans weren't asking, "Is she right?" anymore. They were asking, which version of her is real? And that question cuts deeper than any insult ever could. As days passed, engagement shifted dramatically. Posts criticizing Claressa began outperforming posts defending her. Reaction videos multiplied. Commentary channels labeled her behavior as a pattern, the most dangerous word in internet culture, because one mistake can be forgiven. A pattern becomes an identity. Claressa now stood at a crossroads, whether she realized it or not. Address the contradictions directly and risk exposing vulnerability. Stay silent and let the narrative harden without resistance. Or switch up again and confirm every accusation being thrown her way. None of the options were safe anymore. What's tragic about moments like this is that they often overshadow everything else. Achievements fade, talent becomes secondary, and the story becomes about behavior instead of success. Claressa's accomplishments didn't disappear, but they got quieter under the weight of controversy. And once public respect erodes, rebuilding it takes far more consistency than it took to lose it. As the drama continued to escalate, one truth became unavoidable. The internet isn't mad because Claressa changed her mind. People change their minds every day. The internet is reacting because she changed her story, repeatedly without owning the evolution. Growth requires acknowledgement. Switch-ups without accountability feel dishonest. And that's why this moment feels different from the last. And the one before that, because fans aren't confused anymore, they're cautious. They're watching closely, and they're no longer willing to fill in the gaps on her behalf. Whether Claressa can recover from this depends on what she does next, not emotionally, but consistently. Because once people stop listening with empathy and start listening for contradictions, the story stops being yours to tell. And right now, Claressa Shields isn't just under fire for switching up again. She's under fire because people are wondering if they ever truly knew which version of her they were supporting in the